Hey, what's up? It's your host, Torry, and who is ready to be petty? Today is such a fun episode. It is LOL funny. Kelly from the Boobies and Noobies podcast joins me, and we're talking about some fun topics. Honestly, all about kind of like romance, relationships, and sex. So I hope you like it. This is also a content warning. I know that like I have an explicit tag on my podcast, and if you have been around for a while, I say the F word and stuff like that. But for some reason, I feel like I have to give a content warning that we talk a lot about sex. Just if you're listening, like it's definitely NSFW today. There's also like an absolute character assassination of Pete Davidson in the latter half of this podcast, which is just so funny. And I can't wait for you all to listen and to weigh in on my crazy antics. I also just want to say that I didn't say in the podcast, we talk about Phoebe Dynevor, question mark, if that's how you pronounce her last name, in relation to Pete Davidson and obviously Bridgerton. But she's also in Younger, and the final season of Younger comes out April 15th, and I can't wait. And if you have not watched that TV show, you definitely should. Just a few things that are coming up in RTBP world before we get to the episode. Definitely want to talk about all of the Khloe Kardashian picture drama. I tweeted about it a little bit, but I just feel like there's literally so much to unpack. So I definitely want to get into that. Also going to be talking about Demi Lovato and her documentary. And of course, Queen Britney. We did an episode in early March about framing Britney Spears, and I have yet to edit it. But I think that this week is the week. I'm saying it out loud to hold myself accountable. That was a really great conversation with Derek and Nicole, so stay tuned for that. Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Kelly. I'm back with a very special guest. Kelly from the Boobies and Noobies podcast is here. Kelly, how are you?
Oh my gosh, I am doing okay. And I mean that. Like, I feel like a lot of the times now we say like, oh yeah, fine, okay, good. But we just say it. But like,
Yes.
I'm actually feeling pretty okay today, like emotionally, mentally, physically. Yeah, so not too shabby. How about you?
Good. Could you imagine if I was just like, that's not the case for me. It's the opposite. Like,
I know the perfect response would have just been, oh, I'm fine.
yeah. Oh my God. No, I am doing well. It's Easter Sunday when we're recording.
Yay.
So happy Easter, everybody. And yeah, no, I'm doing well. It's sunny. I did like a little egg hunt with my friends and their kid.
Cute.
And now we're recording. So,
well, and let me tell you, this is a far cry from last year's Easter because last year's Easter fell on my birthday. And it was also very early in the pandemic. And my roommate and I at the time were just the two of us at home and the dog, of course. And we were like, well, what do we do? Like, we can't do anything to really celebrate. And so I ordered a bunch of plastic Easter eggs off Amazon, and we decided to do like a grown adult Easter egg hunt in our courtyard. And then it was raining too. So,
no.
I mean, it was a birthday to remember, let me tell you.
I was literally trying to think about what I did last Easter, and I like literally can't even remember. We were all I was like, did we do this last year? And I'm like, no, we were at like the beginning of the pandemic. Like, what did we do? And I was like, I have no idea. I've blacked that out from my memory.
I mean, March through like September of 2020 is just like a blank space.
Totally. Yeah, even further, honestly. Like,
yep.
It's really hard to recall things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do? Tell us about your podcast, how we met.
Yes.
Our meet cute.
Our meet cute. Okay, well, I want to say I was first introduced to you and your podcast through, I think it was our girls at Honestly Pod, who were doing their 12 days of Podmas in December. and super sweet. I love how uplifting the podcast community is of one another. And they highlighted both of our podcasts, and yours sounded so up my alley because I am a slut for like reality television and gossip and drama. And so I reached out to you, and you were sweet enough to come on my podcast, Boobies and Noobies. And my podcast is all about introducing newbie romance readers to the genre that I'm obsessed with. And I love that, you know, so many people in the last year have fallen in love with romance due to Bridgerton. And before that, it was 50 Shades of Grey. You know, whatever your gateway drug is, that's totally fine. But I do know that there's a lot of great books out there, a lot of great romance books out there. And so I invite guests onto the podcast to read and review what is hopefully their very first one. And it's usually pretty fun.
Yeah, okay. I have so much to tell you since we recorded because you did literally exactly that. I had never read a romance novel before. I tried 50 Shades. I think we talked about this on the pod. I tried 50 Shades. It just wasn't like up my alley. But then we read and reviewed Something New. And it was so light and fun that I have continued to read romance novels.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so happy. Honestly, I end every podcast by asking my guests, so do you think you'll read another one? And I'd say like a good 8 people out of 10 people will say
You're like
yes.
8 people total.
I realized I said 8. I was like, oh man, I have to qualify that because otherwise it's 8 out of how many? But yeah, no, I'd say a good majority of my guests do say that they'll read romance, but I'm not their mom. I'm not checking up on them and making sure. So that makes me feel so good.
I know you did like what you were planning or hoping to do. It's just
mission accomplished.
Honestly, it's just so, and I think like you touched on this before too, of like, it's just so easy to read them. And like we talked about what qualifies for a romance novel, the happily ever after. I don't need like normal people like that book. I don't need to read that. I don't need to like, I just can't digest that right now. I can't get into that like deep reading. So it's been so nice to just read something that like takes me 2 hours and is light and fluffy and like a lot of times, and this was the same when we talked about Something New, I was like laughing out loud because it's funny.
And it's one of those things where I'm sure you could say this about any genre, is there really is something for everyone. Like, I mean, if you want to read about people that look just like you and are your age and your career, and it's very realistically based, you can do that. If you want to read about people falling in love with aliens in a future where a pandemic has hit and you have to have sex with aliens to get antibodies, real true story, like you can read that too. I mean, there is something for everyone.
Yeah, there truly is. And you're right. That's another thing is I feel like sometimes, again, these novels come out so like recently that it's like, I'm a social media manager and stuff.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, cool. Like this is like topical.
There's been a sudden influx of books where the lead hero or heroine is a podcaster. And
yes.
On the one hand, I'm just so excited. And then on the other hand, they're always podcasters who have like 70 million followers. And I just am like, oh, this is so aspirational.
Yeah, I read one too that was like a podcaster / influencer, and she was like recording her yoga videos for her YouTube channel and stuff like that. And I was like, I can't do this.
Isn't that nice?
Yes. I know. She's like, oh, I was just like, at like my mixer for my listeners and stuff. And I was like, Must be nice.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I'm gonna dream. It's great. I'm gonna dream about it at night. But we know.
So is that what got you into the genre, is just like that there's such a variety of storylines and there really is something for everybody?
It's funny because I interview a lot of both, newbies to romance, but also I talk to authors and I talk to publishers and agents and stuff on a regular basis. And a lot of people in the literature community are longtime readers. They love reading. They've loved reading and writing since they were 5 years old, blah, blah, blah. For me, that was not the case. Like, I've always been a writer, but I did not love reading when I was growing up. I was that kid you had to force to sit in a corner and say, okay, you don't get to watch TV until you've read for 30 minutes today. So, and I really do think it's just because I had never found something that I was so interested in reading. And because I grew up as a huge rom-com fan, like
Yeah.
that was my movie genre of choice. I think that's kind of what drew me into romance, because reading a lot of contemporary romance is like reading a rom-com. And
Yes.
they're not all funny. They're not all laugh out loud hilarious, but that was my introduction to romance. And I think that's what drew me in. And so once I devoured a ton of contemporary romance and rom-coms, I thought, well, what else is out here? Oh, okay, I'll pick up a historical one. Okay, I'll pick up a paranormal one. I'll pick up a science fiction one. And yeah, I mean, my appreciation for the genre has just grown over time because I've realized how much is out there and the broad diversity that is out there that is increasing more and more every day.
Yeah, I think that was the easy bridge for me too, because my favorite movie genre is also rom-coms. And this is like, if you're picking ones in like similar category, like that's like really what it is. And I had fallen out of reading too. Like, I read so much in high school, young adult novels, and then when I hit university, it was like I'm not connecting with these high school students, obviously. And then I just didn't find novels about like 20 somethings really outside of now romance. I'm sure there is great novels, but yeah, and the ease of reading them is just so nice.
Amen.
What do you think is some of the bigger misconceptions about romance novels? Because there's obviously like a taboo and like stigma around being a romance reader.
I think a lot of the stigmas fall into two categories. On the one hand, you have the people who, and for the most part, I'm saying this generally in that these are a lot of people who make these assumptions are people who have never read one. And on the one hand, I think people assume this is straight up porn. I've heard the term mommy porn thrown around, which I'm just like, ew, do not Google that, because that is going to bring up a whole range of results. On the other hand, you get people who think, oh, well, this is pure fluff, trash, like no good stories. This is, there's nothing going on, no character development. And both of those notions are just so wrong and so outdated. And, that's not to say that there aren't romance novels out there that aren't great. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stinkers out there, but I think that you can say that about any genre. I've read plenty of books in my life and loved a good majority of them, and found ones that just don't click with me, and it's also a personal choice. Like, not everybody is gonna love everything you write, you read. Like, I mean, it's impossible. We all have different stories, different backgrounds, and that dictates a lot of what our personal interests are. And so for me, if you're thinking that, you know, you're just coming into romance and it's just going to be sex, 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 most of the time you're wrong. And honestly, that's been the thing that has surprised my guests on the show the most, is them coming into it thinking that it was just going to be a, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay. Thinking it was going to be a straight up fuck fest.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's not. In fact, I've made it a point to include in my message to potential guests that not all romance has sex scenes. Like there's a very large group of romance considered to be closed door romances where you never read sex on the page. Now, I love reading sex on the page, don't get me wrong. But if that's your assumption coming into romance, that that's all it's going to be, you're probably either going to be really disappointed or pleasantly surprised and enlightened by reading something about real people and these beautiful stories and personal narratives. And, you know, we're seeing a lot more representation for different races, different sexualities, different genders in romance. It's honestly, the writers I've talked to are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. So it's a great reflection of them and all of the thought that they put into their stories.
Yeah. Like romance is categorized as such a like guilty pleasure, and it's so tired. And I think like I've talked about this for now like almost 3 years on my podcast about like just that like there really is no such thing, because why would you feel guilty about something that brings you joy and like that millions of other people like?
Oh yeah. I mean, when we talk about romance, you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like the amount of people who read romance is insane in the best way possible. So yeah, no guilt whatsoever, only pleasure.
What would you suggest for people that are like, okay, maybe I'll give this a go?
Okay, well, first of all, check out my podcast, Boobies Noobies. No, and honestly, I do think podcasts are a great way to find movies and books and music recommendations, because, you know, they're coming from the point of view of somebody who is interested in that and they want to make those recommendations. Like if anybody ever wanted to reach out and just say, hey, Kelly, I'd love a recommendation for my first romance novel. I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z. Then I would say, oh, okay, great. Well, then you might like this book by this person. It's hard to give like a blanket statement of like, this should be the first romance novel you ever read, because everybody, again, likes different things. You know, I happen to, there's one series that I just finished the second book in that I think is really fun because it feels like you're reading a modern day sitcom, but it's set in the 1800s.
Interesting. You've piqued my interest.
Yes, I think it's brilliant. And I've talked to the author a couple times, and she's even said, she's like, I had no idea that's what I was writing when I wrote it. But if historical is not your thing, and you're looking for an escape, I mean, there's everything under the sun when it comes to paranormal. You've got vampires, you've got werewolves, you've got bear shifters. I mean, I happen to really enjoy an alien romance every now and then, like, because it's just so far removed from reality that I'm like, yeah, no rules. You do whatever you want. This is absolutely, you tell me he's got two dicks. Okay, that's fine. Like, his skin is red and he has horns like the devil? Okay, like, why not? So, I mean, there are so many places to start, so many amazing books. So I strongly recommend, if anybody does want to give romance a go, hit me up. I'm happy to make any recommendations. There are also a shit ton of other fantastic romance podcasts out there. So I love them. I love to listen to them. I get recommendations from them. You can too.
Nice. I've even seen on TikTok, like a bunch of people are starting to,
yes,
like if you liked Bridgerton, read this or watch this or whatever, which is like so nice. Because sometimes, yeah, that is like, where do I go next after I've like enjoyed something a lot?
Yeah, one of my favorite authors, Candy Steiner, she writes indie published contemporary romance. It's usually on the angstier side, but she does have some rom-coms. She recently posted a video on TikTok and it went viral overnight. Like she had like 2 million views. And then her book the next day skyrocketed to #1 on Amazon in like the romance store. And she was like, she was overcome with disbelief and like excitement. And we were too, because we were like, yes, look at this, spreading the word on TikTok and bringing in some new readers. Fantastic.
I love that. Do you ever find like romance novels or rom-coms give you unrealistic relationship or sex expectations?
No, I mean, I guess that would be another misconception I feel like a lot of people have is like, okay, if you read romance, then you're only going to think, okay, the man I have to end up with is a Navy SEAL, super alpha. He has his own house. He has 2 dogs. He will cater to my every need. That, I'm sorry, like, I don't think most women want that. That sounds exhausting. Like, I will say, as fictional as romance is, because we have to remember it's still fiction, there are so many real themes and relationship aspects that you find in romance. And especially the romance that's being written today, the characters are flawed. I mean, the characters are not perfect people. They do not have perfect relationships. And that's what attracts me the most to romance is, if anything, it gives me expectations that there is somebody out there for me that like, okay, these people are so opposite of each other and they don't even really want the same things, but when they come together, they help make each other better and help improve whatever situation they're in. And I don't think there's anything unrealistic about that. Like, I think that's an expectation that we all should have. If you are interested in being partnered, obviously there are plenty of people out there who are very happy being single, and that's totally fine too. But yeah, if anything, I think it makes you feel like more hopeful that there is such a thing as, I can't even say like perfect love or true love. Ugh, that's just
soulmates.
No. Yeah. And you know what? Some people like that. It's not for me. But but yeah, just that there is such a thing as love out there. And, whether you want it or not, because especially during the last year, we need that. We need that hope.
Yeah, I guess that's a good thing. Like, I feel like I've learned a lot about like these people these people in these books, like I feel like generally they like wrong their mistakes or they communicate like worries or concerns or frustrations or whatnot. And like, I think that's something that everyone can like take away from the books.
Yeah. I think there's lessons to be learned in any book you read, any movie you watch, even when you're watching like trashy reality TV, like we are. Like, I mean, if anything, my takeaway from watching shows is, well, that's one thing I'll never do. Like, so, I mean, I feel like there's always something to learn. I find education in general really sexy. Like, just the idea of like taking the time to intentionally teach yourself something or learn something from a class, a situation, a book, anything. I think that's incredible. Like, I think that makes all of us better humans. So, it's up to you whether or not you want to think about it that far.
Yes.
Like, if you want to just read a book and say, haha, that was fun, and they hooked up, yay. Like,
yes,
you can do that. You can do that too.
I love that, because my friend and I always talk about like how everyone is always looking for the lesson, which is great in a lot of cases, but it's like also we don't need to learn a lesson from this. Like, you can just enjoy it for what it is.
I can just watch, Barb and Star go to Del Mar and like enjoy Jamie Dornan's body. Like that, I don't have to think, wow, this is the most poignant piece of film I've ever seen.
Totally. And you sent me a BuzzFeed article and it was like about rom-com, like the grand gesture or like the meet cute or whatever just being like unrealistic in New York because of like traffic and lines and stuff like that.
Speaking of unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, I guess like we were always being set up in like rom-coms for certain things anyways.
Well, and here's the thing. Fine, I'll take it. You know, like I love a good meet cute. I think there's I've heard other authors refer to meet cutes as like not, but like the more awkward version, like a meet awkward or like a meet ugly. Oh, I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was like a meet ugly. And I was like, oh, I like that too. Like that one to me is more appealing. I'm also a huge fan of like the enemies to lovers tropes in romance. So no wonder I want it to be ugly at the beginning.
Yes, I read one. It was like so funny. It was like a guy accidentally sent a dick pic to somebody that he wasn't supposed to, and that was their meet cute.
Love it. I might have read that one too, actually.
But it's so funny. Romance novels in the 21st century.
It's so true. We just finished up our March reading theme was digital love. And let me tell you, first of all, there was not enough like sexting or photos or any. I was very disappointed but really that's my fault. I chose the book. But at the same time, there were a couple instances where it's become very popular for people to send messages to the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then they start an online flirtation or a texting chat. And I'm like, why isn't that happening to me? Like, do I
text random numbers?
I might just start texting like random numbers,
yes.
like that number neighbor thing.
Yes.
Which, by the way, somebody did write a romance about a few years ago, was that number neighbor thing. And I think it's even called Number Neighbor original. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that article really cracked me up, though, especially when it comes to like how much people pay for like their apartments and stuff in rom-coms. Like, oh, you're setting us up for failure.
I know, like your beautiful like 3-bedroom with a huge walk-in closet in New York. Like,
and they always live in Manhattan too.
Yes.
Like that's the other thing is like, where's the borough love? You know?
Yes, it has to be that like hustle bustle, like I'm a high-powered attorney and you're the CEO.
That's a lot of power right there. Like that's a lot of power. That's a lot of money. That's a loft apartment. Like that's a lot.
That was like another thing that I found, and maybe it's just because I got on like one genre and then just like never moved off it. But it's like the hero is always in like a penthouse suite.
How boring. Like, I mean, on the one hand, like, yes, I mean, I'm happy to fantasize about like the penthouse overlooking Central Park,
yes.
the private elevator. Like, I get it. That's great. However, there are so many other things that are like just as enticing to me.
Honestly.
Yeah, like in these stories, like, and I mean, it sounds like these are more like, I would say older romance novels or older rom-coms. Like, I do think it's changing, but in those stories, it's like, okay, penthouse, billionaire, private jet, driver. And then in reality, it's like, okay, if you have one of the following, you're getting a second date. Bed frame, more than one towel, a job, food in the fridge.
Totally.
Yeah, you only need one. And guess what? It's probably not going to be a bed frame.
It's so funny. So I want to touch on this before we move into like Bridgerton, because I feel like that's what everyone's going to come here for, because it has been quite an upset this week. But you worked in reality TV.
I did. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I lived in LA for about 5 years. I went to school for screenwriting and moved to LA with the intention of being Nora Ephron.
Nice.
It's still a work in progress. I've since left LA, which honestly I'm perfectly fine with. It's a very specific beast to deal with. And if you do it, great, good for you. But not so much for me after a few years. So I one of my first jobs I got was interning with the production company that produces Real World, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, amongst others. And I ended up working there for about 3.5 years and worked predominantly on Real World was actually my first job that I was working for as a video logger.
Oh no.
Oh boy. I was a night logger too. So I would come in at 6 p.m. and work until 3 a.m. logging footage from the day. And I think it was the last season of Real World they did on the air on MTV. Like I'm pretty sure it's come back since then, but in like some different version. Like I'm not sure if it's a web-based series now or what.
Yeah, I think that it came back for a reunion season. I don't know what it is exactly. It was something that I was like, I should get back into this because I did really like Real World back in the day, and then I just never did. But
so that was my first gig, was Real World.
That's a good gig to start on. Did anything surprise you from working behind the scenes? Were you a fan of reality TV before that?
You know, I've always been a fan of competition TV. Like I'm a huge fan of like Top Chef and The Great British Baking Show and Project Runway. Actually, the company I did work for was doing Project Runway as well, but they were in like a whole different building. I don't know why Project Runway was like so isolated. But yeah, I, in addition to that one job, I also worked in casting for about 1.5 years for another company. So I kind of had the benefit of seeing projects in all stages. I went from helping with the casting of shows to also working with, as shows are being produced, we're, logging the footage and putting together episodes. And then at the end of post, like putting, episodes out. I will say there is it's a long process. Like it's the amount of like edits that you see and how they change every episode. You have notes from internally between like the producers, and then you have notes from the head of the company, and then you have notes from the network you're working with. So, I mean, there are some things that turn out really easy. I will say I found game shows to be the easiest thing to work on and also the most fun to work on.
Yes.
But the longer shows where you're spending a season with, the same group of people and it's 15 plus episodes, that's a process. I mean, it really is the amount of work that goes into it. God bless those editors. Like they have to do so much work.
Totally. Yeah, I even think about shows like Big Brother where they have to do it on the fly because it's taping when it's airing, and I just cannot even imagine. I'm like, no wonder we're all pissed on Twitter that the edit is bad, or that like we didn't like the way that they showed how something happened because we thought it was different. It's like, they're literally doing this like off the cuff.
Well, and speaking as somebody who's worked in like the editing process, I was never an editor. I worked in story and I worked as like a post-production assistant. And there's a lot of people like as fans watch shows and they hear about like things behind the scenes and like, well, this was cut, or like, why didn't we see this? I can't speak for everybody, but I know that for the shows I worked on, a lot of things that get cut are not things that necessarily the editors or the writers want to cut. Like a lot of the time, it does come from the network. It comes from them wanting to present a specific image or wanting to turn a story that could be 5 minutes into 5 episodes. So there's definitely manipulation. Like I think a lot of people think reality TV is like, we write everything for them to say. It's not to that extent. Like I've been on sets. There are producers that will prompt people in interviews with certain questions to try to lead you to a specific response. However, it's not scripted by any means. At least the shows that I've worked on weren't. But I have seen what happens when there is pushback. I watched almost an entire team of editors quit production because they did not approve of the way that their higher ups were trying to curb the story in a different way that shied away from something a little more serious.
Yeah.
And that's something I've actually seen with a few different networks and a few different shows that I've worked on, is trying to hide stories like abuse. Or the one that really ticked me off was working for a network that wanted to cut an interview because they talked about miscarriage. That one really upset me because I thought that was a beautiful story. I mean, it's an ugly story, but it was a beautiful, honest discussion about something that I don't think we talk enough about in the world today. And I was so upset that they wanted to cut that because, oh, well, we don't want to talk about miscarriage on TV. Like, yikes. Yeah. So there are some great networks out there and shows out there that are doing the work and trying to talk about these things, and some that are still producing the same show that they've been producing for 20 years. So
is that like a little shade to The Bachelor?
I definitely did not work on that one, but that would fall into the category of we're doing the same old shit. Like, yeah. I mean, I just find it so boring. Like, why not evolve with the world?
Totally. They seem so scared of losing their audience that they are in turn losing it for the reason that everyone's asking for. Like they need to evolve, and we could talk about this forever. And like, I know that you don't watch it. You don't watch it like regularly, right?
I don't. I have been keeping up with some of the stuff that's been going on with Chris Harrison. And I obviously, I listen to your podcast, so I'm familiar with, is it Racist Rachel? Is that what we call it?
Yes, we do.
I will say you are a major source of my Bachelor news.
Thank you. I'm kind of out on the show right now, and they're producing like a gazillion more seasons this year, and
yikes.
It's just because of what you're saying. Like, it's like I've seen this literally 1,000 times before, even though I know that there's new material that they're just not bringing to light.
It's disappointing because you know what, they probably, if they decided to move forward with the times and, I don't know, not hire a racist host, sure, they would lose followers. You know what? They would lose viewers, but I feel like they would also gain a lot of viewers. Totally. And they would gain viewers for good reasons. So let's just start fresh stuff. Like, let's start fresh shows and create new movies that aren't based on books, and write new books that aren't the same iteration of Pride and Prejudice again. I mean, I love Pride and Prejudice, don't get me wrong.
Of course.
But I just want to see new, thoughtful, diverse content from different creators too. That's the important thing, is I think that's a major component, is who's creating it.
And there has been, like, I think about this with like YouTube and TikTok and stuff. There has been such a bottleneck of who's creating stuff and who has eyes on it. But now with these more like anyone can post on these platforms, we're starting to see people get credit and to just gain an audience from these like or less traditional forms of media, which is really nice to see.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about Bridgerton. So as we head into that and you're talking about TikTok, I have to mention, have you watched the incredible duo behind Bridgerton the musical on TikTok?
No, but I am very intrigued.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to look up their names just so I can make sure that I plug them correctly, because it's these two beautiful women who one of them I think is an aspiring singer. Like I think she's more of the singer, and the other one is the composer piano player, and they just started posting videos on TikTok. And I think the first one was more of just kind of like, what if Bridgerton was a musical? Ha ha ha. And they've basically gone on to write songs for like the entire show. And it is beautiful. I mean, I am a theater person and it is gorgeous. Like I am just waiting for them to get a deal with, like doing something. And I know that they've spoke out about like, okay, are we going to actually try to make this like a Broadway show, or are we going to release an album that's kind of like Hamilton's mixtape where it's, just a concept? And I have no idea. It's Abigail Barlow and Emily Bear. And they're just, oh my God, the music is beautiful. So I definitely recommend checking them out.
I'm so excited. I know exactly what I'm going to do once we finish recording is spend an afternoon on TikTok.
You will love it.
I'm so excited. So speaking of Bridgerton, like the world was up in arms this week when Lady Whistledown announced that Regé-Jean Page would not be returning for season 2 of Bridgerton. What were your thoughts?
I mean, on the one hand, it's very, very sad because he is a gorgeous specimen. I mean, if you told me he was like chiseled from marble, I would believe it. And it makes perfect sense to me on 2 points. One, he's blown up as a star because of this show. And they're talking about making him the next James Bond. And I would love to see that, by the way. I am so here for that. The second thing is that I think a lot of people who don't read romance, they're the ones who are very upset about this because they're not familiar with the fact that in a lot of romance series, and I'm not sure if I explained this to you on the podcast or not, but you have to treat a romance series like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you have all these different superheroes, all these different characters, and you see them in each other's stories. However, they all have their own individual movies or individual books. And that's what the Bridgerton series is like. Julia Quinn, the author, that's how her series is in book form. Is we got to see book 1 in the first season of Bridgerton. It was very much about the Duke and Daphne. At the end of it, they hinted towards who the next hero would be. It's her older brother, Anthony. Yum, yum, yum. And we haven't actually met his love interest on the show yet. She has been cast for season 2 and she's gorgeous, but it's going to focus on them. So if you're a fan of the books and you've read romance before, it's very understandable. Like oh, okay, well, we did their story. Great. Now we're on to the next sibling. And then guess what? Season 3, it's going to be about a different sibling. Season 4, same thing. I think there's like 8 books. So
get ready.
We've got plenty of shows to get through. So I get it. I wish that he was at least going to pop in and out. Yeah, I do. But it does make sense to me. So I'm okay with it.
Yes. Okay. So I think we've been on the same page because I knew that it was going to be Anthony, which means
Yes.
that the Duke and Duchess were going to be secondary cast members. I think I just always hoped that even though the focal point wasn't on them, that they would be, yeah, like in the background and
Yeah.
like still have like the C plot or something.
Yeah, and from what I understand, as far as I know, I think Phoebe, who plays Daphne, I think she's still gonna be there. But you know what? This is something that I think they could easily explain away too, is
Yes.
just like, oh, he's at their
Yes.
country home or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. So again, it would be great just to look at
I
him for
know. I know.
another season.
I know.
But I've made my peace with it. And I also find the actor who plays Anthony ridiculously sexy. So
Same.
I'm super excited for him.
Me too. Me too. I'm very, very excited. Yeah, I think that I also have made peace with it, that it's just going to be
Yeah.
like a different show, because you're right, like in romance series they're standalone books usually, right?
Yes.
And we'll see Phoebe, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Dynevor, in like the Bridgerton household, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So this, if anybody like wants to read the books to just sort of like catch up on what happens, or like honestly know what happens before the show airs, which I know a lot of people are doing. The second book in the series is called The Viscount Who Loves Me. And that's Anthony's story. It's okay. I'm trying to remember the setup. It's been a while since I read this one, but I know that the heroine's name is Kate Sheffield, and she's like a fan favorite amongst people who read this series because he, I think, is set to marry her younger sister in the book, but she's like the feisty older sister. And of course, they clash and butt heads, but we know that that makes for a great romance.
Totally. Totally. Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. I don't know if I'm going to read the books before I watch the TV show.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. I'll just wait till next Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do read them, you'll probably catch like, little Easter eggs in the series that have been planted just Easter. Hello.
Yeah.
That was perfect. That have been created specifically for fans. But at the same time, if you come into it fresh, you also have nothing to compare it to. You don't have the books to say, she wore a blue bonnet in the book,
Yeah.
and in the show it's yellow. So yeah, that's I totally understand both sides of it, but whatever you decide to do.
Totally. Do you think people will like actually not watch because Regé-Jean's not in it?
I don't think so. I'm sure a lot of people will threaten not to watch, like, oh, how dare you take him away. He was never, I mean, if you read interviews with him, he was never promised to be on the show. It's not like they're taking this away from him. Like, they've given him so much from the show. And I think he knew from the very beginning it was a 1-season arc, beginning, middle, end of our story between him and Daphne. Great, let's move on. So if he's okay with it, I feel like we should be okay with it.
Totally. I think also that might be good for his career because you see how pigeon-held like Robert Pattinson and Jamie Dornan is to these like certain roles, and maybe it's good that he's like one and done.
And you know what? He was hysterical on SNL.
He was really good.
Jamie Dornan, I've also seen in sketches. Like he does this hysterical sketch with James Corden on the Late Late Show. And so I would love to see him in a comedy or like something a little more like, maybe if he is James Bond, he could be like the sexy but also like sarcastically funny James Bond. Like I would love that.
I feel like the only way to get me back into the James Bond series is if he is the lead.
Yeah. I would be okay with that. I would be more than okay with that.
Totally. Like, I'd be going back to the theater.
Yep. On opening night.
Yes, totally. And there's been a little bit of like off-screen drama per se. Phoebe has been spotted with Pete Davidson, not only in Brooklyn, but also in the UK.
I'm covering my face for everyone that can't see me. I just, I mean, on the one hand, I'm a huge SNL fan, and I will say there's always been a lot of talk about Pete Davidson on the show in terms of like, he's not here, like he doesn't show up, or he's, always on drugs or whatever. And I have seen a lot of change in him in the last season. Like, he's in a lot more sketches. He's taking on different roles. I mean, we've seen him making some movies, writing some movies. So on the one hand, I do appreciate the fact that it does seem like he is getting help. Like, I know that he's, he has suffered with like depression for years, and so many people do. So like, kudos to him for getting a hand on that. At the same time, we also know Pete Davidson's dating history.
It's not great.
It's not the best. And I was looking back at some of his previous relationships, because obviously the ones that I think of are Kate Beckinsale and Ariana Grande, who are like polar opposites. But most of his relationships have like a 2 to 3 month expiration date. Like, if you look at them like all next to each other, it's like 3 months and then boom, over. So I don't know. Like, I wish them the best. I think she's adorable. I don't really know anything about her in real life. But sure, why not?
I told my friends that this is what we were going to be talking about on the podcast, and it was like 9 out of 10 were like, gross. And then there was like me and my other friend, and we were like, no, we're kind of into it. There's something about Pete Davidson that I like, and trust me, I hate myself for saying that. Like, no one is more annoyed than myself. I don't know what it is. I feel like lately I've been really into the like Machine Gun Kelly, Travis Barker,
Yikes.
Pete Davidson. Like, I'm having a fucking crisis.
You're learning something new about yourself that you didn't know before, and maybe not something that you appreciate about yourself either.
Totally. And you can recommend some romance novels for me that have that look.
Well, it sounds like you would have to read like a rock star romance.
Yeah,
I feel like that look, because I really haven't read that many rapper romances. And when I think about Pete Davidson, like, he does have that like Slim Shady look about him. Yes. Like, where I just can't get on board. Like, I remember a few years ago, everyone was like, there's something sexy about this guy. Yes, like, there's something hot, and I just don't get it. I don't get it. And most of the time, I don't think he's funny. Like, again, I do think he's doing better on SNL, but I've watched his stand-up. Don't think it's funny. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's got a massive penis.
Yes,
like, I
that
feel
has
like
been discussed at length.
Yeah, at length and width and girth. But I really just don't. It's one of those things, like, when you hear about the women he's dated, Ariana Grande, Phoebe, Kate Beckinsale, you're like, these women are bombshells.
Yes.
What is it about Pete Davidson that is drawing them in? Like, I just don't get it. Like, he's not even like rich. Like, I mean, like, if you're looking for something that like attracts people, I'm like, okay, it's gotta be, he's gotta have like this big dick energy that just.
I think that's literally what it is. Like, his body aside, I honestly think that he has this kind of like doesn't give a fuck attitude, or just like this like ease of living that I just like this anxiety ridden girl is interested in.
Maybe that's what it, see, and I'm somebody where I'm so, I don't want to say like alpha, but it's like, that is one of the least attractive qualities to me in a man, is like, if I go on it, like, do you remember that commercial that would be on where it's like the couple sits down on their first date and he's like, you look amazing. And he takes off his like sweatshirt and he has this wholly stretched out t-shirt. And she's like, and you look amazingly comfortable. And that is like the story of my dating life, is like somehow finding myself on dates with men who are like, yeah, I hate my job. It's terrible. My boss sucks. Let me text you about it all day long. But God forbid you suggest they do something about it or quit. And they're like, yeah, maybe.
Okay, but you're so right. Like, you don't want to hang out with Pete or Machine Gun or Travis Barker, because they are that guy 100%. Yes. But just from like afar, it is like the total like fantasy, like they're, because you're right, as soon as they start talking about these types of things, you're annoyed.
If this was like a marry fuck kill situation, and you could totally fuck that guy, like, yes. I mean, I can see where it's like maybe the dick is just so good with Pete Davidson that it lasts for like 2 to 3 months, and then the women realize, oh, so that's it. Like, it's just, do I want to sacrifice my life for like really good penis? Yeah. Or is there more? You know, I mean, more? And look, if that's what you want, like, get it. I mean, that's totally fine. But I don't know. Like, I do know that after I forget if it was Ariana or no, it must have been after that. I think it was like January or February of last year. He said, like, I'm going to take a break from like the whole dating thing because it had been so many relationships like back to back to back to back. And I don't know if I've really heard anything about him dating people since then. So maybe you know more than I do, but if that's the case, I mean, maybe he took his break and he found something he liked in Phoebe.
I think that what you're talking about is maybe when he ended his relationship with Kaya Gerber.
Who is that? I don't even know who that is.
She is a supermodel. She's like 18 or 19.
He got a supermodel? He had a supermodel girlfriend.
Yes. Her mom is one of the original supermodels, and she was in the Pepsi ad in like the 90s, and I can't remember her name. They look identical. It's gonna kill me.
Well, he'll probably date her next.
Yes. But maybe he did take some time out, because like that was another thing. I was like, okay, hanging out in New York is like one thing, but him going to the UK where like she's staying with her mom is like a completely different story.
Yeah. When you're like famous-ish and you have money that's like, you know, maybe not millions, but like you've got the money, I feel like hopping on a plane and going to visit somebody, that's like a weekend trip.
You're right. Even in the pandemic, it's just a weekend trip.
Yeah. Although it is, because it is during the pandemic, maybe that is more of a commitment to be like, true. You know what? It's not like I'm going to meet you outside for drinks. Like, I'm talking about getting on an airplane to come see you. Like, I am risking my life to come see you.
Only time will tell where this relationship goes.
Well, let's see. It's April now. So we know when June rolls around, that's when we should be on the lookout for if they're still together or not.
Totally. And I just love how this information came to light. It was like a 12-year-old girl saw them in this tiny town on the like outskirts of Manchester and was like, oh my God, I'm a big fan. Can I take a picture? And then like immediately went and sold it to the tabloids.
Was she a fan of Phoebe or Pete?
I don't know. I
hope it was Phoebe.
I think what she said was like he just stood out so much that it was like they were so easily spottable just because he doesn't look like anybody else that lives in that town.
tall, skinny dude with like a million tattoos.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It looks like he could die at any moment. Like, love it. Anyways, moving on to like honestly another like love saga that I've been following forever. This time they're like 16-year-olds, so I'll have to make peace with that at another time. But Olivia Rodrigo released a new song called Deja Vu, her second off the album, which is rumored to be called Sour. She blocked out some of the letters, but it was also on like the mirror in the car in the music video. So it's a pretty good guess. It is basically a follow-up from Driver's License. Were you a Driver's License fan?
I mean, I heard it. I honestly like I listened to it I think once before. Oh, ironically, I think it was the Regé-Jean Page episode of SNL where they did a sketch about Driver's License. And I think after that was when I was like, oh, okay, so this is like something people are listening to. Like, let me go listen again. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's different. It kind of reminds me of like how everybody lost their shit when like Billie Eilish like first came on the scene, just because it's like a little bit different. So I don't know. Like I thought it was good, but whatever.
Yeah, I realized literally yesterday I was in an outdoor exercise class and Driver's License was like the cool down song. And I had to realize I had never listened to it front to back because I only ever listened to it on TikTok.
Okay, is that how it got famous? It was like, because you have to forgive me, I'm not on the TikTok.
That's fine. Yeah, I think that is why it like super, super blew up. And then the other reason being that it is like very clearly directed at her ex, Joshua Bassett, who she is co-stars with in High School Musical, the series.
Oh, that's who these people are. This is not on my radar. Like I'm a almost 30-year-old woman, so
same.
16-year-old romance sagas are not. I'm not up to date.
That is totally fair.
The fact that they have had a love saga at the age of 16 really makes me worry for teenagers today.
Okay, you have no idea because the first song was like kind of about getting your driver's license and finding true love and then the person moving on.
Because one thing does lead to another. Just so you know. Like you get your driver's license, then you're like, shit, now I got love too.
It's literally like plot A, B, C. And then what happens next is she releases this song that's like literally a follow-up, Deja Vu. And it's describing her watching or like learning about her ex's new relationship, which is Sabrina Carpenter, which is where this all gets juicier.
I feel like I know her name. Is this somebody I should know?
No. like
maybe I'm making that up in my head.
When it comes down to it, no. But like she was one of the leads in Girl Meets World.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we grew up with Boy Meets World.
Yes. So that was really a big deal. And then she's been in some movies. She has some like pop songs.
Well, and the album is rumored to be called Sour. Okay, so clearly Olivia is processing some emotions. Yes.
And people are like, oh, she's the next Taylor Swift because of the very clear... I can't even call them hints, but like the lyrics, because it's so obvious. The lyrics are like so clearly describing this one relationship, and people are having a field day going through the lyrics and the music video and finding those hints and then like projecting them onto to these people.
My God, it's like a college level like literature analysis course where people are just like, you know what? I don't know if this is what the author intended, but I'm looking at this and she uses the word red, and clearly red means anger. So she,
Yes.
by proxy, is angry at these people. You know what? And like, I'm not a huge T Swift fan in general. I will say she has some catchy tunes. Like, she's definitely got some jams, but I don't know why she's the artist that gets so much shit from people about like writing about her relationships and everything. Cause like, isn't that what all musicians do?
Literally every single one.
Yeah. I don't get it. Like, and I think honestly, part of the reason I don't love her is because I grew up reading all these things about Taylor Swift. Oh, she dates so many people. Oh, she does this and this. Oh, she broke up with somebody again and then wrote about it. I think that's just, it became like so ingrained in me that I was supposed to dislike Taylor Swift because of that I started to. And that's just something I recognize as an issue in myself. But if that's the case for Olivia, I guess she's going to be a massive star that also has a lot of people that hate her.
Yeah, well, I think that Taylor paved the way for people like Olivia. Like, I feel like Olivia won't have a hard time per se because there's been so much acknowledgement that did happen with Taylor, because even I had like maybe a 2-year period where I was soured on Taylor Swift. just gotta try to spice it up a little, but
yeah, get it on in there.
But like, you're totally right. Like, she got hated for no reason, and like, well, I say no reason, it's misogyny is the reason. But
that's exactly what, anytime it's like girl on girl, well, not anytime, I mean, but girls do bad things too, but like, I feel like a lot of girl on girl hate is mostly internalized misogyny. It's us very much being told this is how women are supposed to behave, and we're supposed to exist in this box of rules. And when somebody goes outside of the box and does something that doesn't fit in, that's wrong. That's totally. You know, you need to think that this is wrong, because if you do it too, you will also be wrong. And so I think that's honestly the reason a lot of us are like, so I just talked about this with an author, and she said this beautiful thing. She's like, compare and despair will destroy you. Like, anytime you're worrying about what other people think of you, you're comparing yourself to other podcasters, to other singers and their music, that is going to bring you down, because you're not them. They're not you. You have your own stories, your own voice. Like, you have to put that all aside and focus on you and your work, because that's the only way you're going to succeed. So, oh, Olivia. So do we know, like, when does this like full album drop?
I don't know, but it's soon. Like, she's released 2 singles off of it, and they've done so well. Like, they have done so well.
That's cool. Is there any thought that like, who is it? Josh and Sabrina. Just these names are killing me.
It could be a TV show. Josh, Sabrina, and Olivia.
Actually, that'd be like a dope show. I like that title. Is there any idea that like there was like something scandalous happening like while they were still together, or like has enough time passed?
I don't even think that they had like a big like salacious breakup. Like, I literally think they just kind of maybe drifted apart, and then he like did start dating someone pretty soon after, but I don't think it was anything like super scandalous. I'll have to like reread up on my Olivia-Josh news saga, but there's just been like some really funny slights. Like, he was at the like Teen Choice Awards or something like that, and he's walking off stage, and the music that they play is Driver's License.
Oh my God, that is so. How much do you think her publicist had to pay the person in the sound booth to make that happen?
It was just so funny. Or he reacted to the SNL skit on TikTok, and he was just like, oh my God, like, I can't ever like get away from this. But
yeah, because SNL is here to personally victimize you.
Joshua Bassett. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
that's just going out of your way for attention. Like by going out and doing that, like saying like, I can't believe like this song is following me.
I think that this was like another piece of it though, is because they're like, this is such good publicity that he must also be loving this.
Yeah, that's true, because he's probably, they're on that High School Musical. Is that still happening? Is that a show?
Yeah, season 2 is coming out soon.
Yikes. Okay. So yeah, I feel like this would be, how many people are going to want to tune in to watch a show featuring exes? Like, oh God, that's juicy.
They're exes in real life and they are partners in the TV show. Like they're a couple.
Yes, that is the best.
They are the Troy and Gabriella in the reboot.
Oh, I love that so much. I mean, it's very, okay, I'm going to make a comparison that's very different, but I promise there's a reason. So I've been watching the Woody Allen versus Mia Farrow documentary.
Okay, I don't know where this is going.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, like, there's I know there's a lot to unpack in that documentary, but there's a section though where when Woody Allen and Mia Farrow were like already breaking up and like they were going through a heinous, breakup. Like if anybody's watched the series or lived in the 80s, like you'll know. But they had basically made half of a movie together before the breakup, and then they had to go make the other half of the movie together. And people say it's one of the most interesting Woody Allen movies to watch because you can basically tell where the breakup happened, like by watching. So I'm always really interested in seeing couples who maybe became couples working on a set together, but then broke up and like they still have to work together. I am so fascinated by seeing how that plays out on screen.
Me too. Yeah, same with like the Vampire Diaries, or I'm trying to, there must be other ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any offhand. Like I think of the OC, but I feel like they were still together
throughout the whole time. I know, because I was thinking about Twilight, but I'm pretty sure they were together the entire time too.
I feel like they were never together. I mean, I feel like that was like such a publicity thing. Like I just have such a hard time believing that one.
It's kind of like the Olivia Josh thing. Like,
yeah,
when they started dating, but it's like, but you are also the leads of a TV show, and it's also the Troy and Gabriella characters. This is too good to be true.
Also, anybody who ever grew up in theater knows that like showmances are like such a thing. Like people have these stupid relationships with each other during shows, and then guess what? 3 weeks after the show, you done. Like that's it. Like, and so, I mean, I would not be shocked if they got back together, if, I don't know, she dates somebody else from the show. Like that happens all the time. I'm really curious though, why she called this song Deja Vu. Like I haven't listened yet, so
it's talking about like basically, does the guy get deja vu because they're doing all the same things that we did together, like go on drives, eat strawberry ice cream, listen to Billy Joel. It's like, well, we did that first. Does she think that's special? Are you getting deja vu because you've done this before with me?
That's a little passive aggressive.
It was so passive aggressive. Like the first one was like also really direct, and this one was like, it's honestly like a dunk on Sabrina. Honestly, it is. You can't come back from this, honestly.
Yeah, that's definitely not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a lot more focused on her, of like, oh, the same old thing happened to me again, even though I'm only 16. But no, it's like, bitch, he takes you for ice cream. Guess what? You're not special. Okay, we all go for ice cream though. Settle down.
I know. Like sometimes I'm like, well, isn't that just life? Because you can't just avoid every single activity you did with
like
your ex.
any activity, any date you went on, any movie you watched with your ex-partner, now you're not allowed to do that with somebody else.
It's a interesting career path, and I'm just really excited to see kind of like how it turns out. Like, does she parlay herself into a Taylor Swift style career, or does she like pivot because we already have Taylor Swift?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's in the limelight anyway as an actor, so it's like, I don't know. I mean, we're around the same age, and there was a good time. Well, I don't know, it's a good time, but there was a time in like the mid 2000s where every teen actress was also releasing her debut album. I mean, Hilary Duff did it, Lindsay Lohan did it, like everybody did it.
I know. And I still listen to those.
Oh yeah, classic. Yeah. I mean, absolute let the rain fall down. I mean, that's forever in my heart.
Totally.
Lindsay Lohan, not so much, but H. Duff, absolutely.
Totally. Yeah, you were either a Hilary Duff girl or a Lindsay girl for sure.
I don't even think today Lindsay's a Lindsay girl.
Oh, no. Yeah, well, people, I guess, will be listening to these songs when they're nearing their 30s.
Oh my gosh. Is Olivia Rodrigo gonna be the new Hilary Duff? Like, I mean, that's
is kind of Hillary, Aaron Carter, Lindsay Lohan situation.
Aaron Carter. Let me tell you, Aaron Carter was doing a tour of small theaters and universities when I was a senior in college, and he came to my college to perform, and it happened to be on my birthday. And I was out of town celebrating my birthday, but I had a couple girlfriends that went to the concert, and they were just like, damn, this guy, he looks strung out. Like he's come a long way, but not in the right way. So maybe that'll be the career
of Joshua.
People.
Oh God, that's so dark.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take it. Deja vu. I didn't mean to take it there. But I mean, I always root for people. Like I don't know anything about Olivia or Joshua or Sabrina. That's what it is.
Yes.
All I know is I want to watch the sitcom Olivia and Joshua and Sabrina.
I know. It seems like it's like a CW TV show or something like that.
And you know what? It could be in a couple years. Give them a few years.
Okay, one thing I want to say before we wrap up, but like saying that Olivia is like Hilary Duff or Lindsay Lohan is such a disservice to Olivia's musical and talent and writing ability. Like, I also want to apologize.
That's where my mind went, because I don't know Olivia. I haven't even listened to Deja Vu yet. I've heard Driver's License like 3 times. So I am not the authority on these people. Like this, I am not the one who should be talking about these people.
It is like good music. Like, I will put that out there. Cool. And like Hilary Duff's debut album was also good music, but like for different reasons. Like,
we've come a long way.
Yes, we have. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This was really fun.
Oh my gosh, it was a pleasure. I am always game to talk about romance, trashy TV, music, and love sagas for teenagers. Like, I am here for all of this. This was so fun.
Good. I'm glad. If the listeners want to dive into romance and listen to the pod, where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I am boobiesandnoobies.com. On my website, I've got links to all of our, previous episodes. You can always listen on the website itself. If you want to listen to the podcast, pretty much any podcast playing platform will do you good. And I'm at Boobies Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So come on over. All April long, I'm doing a massive giveaway on Instagram. So if you want to maybe take home a free romance novel, check it out, because it's happening literally all April long.
Nice. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Thank you so much, Kelly, for coming on the pod, and thank you so much for listening. The supermodel's name that I could not remember was obviously Cindy Crawford, but that name was just really escaping me at the time. If there's something that you want me to talk about on the next podcast, send me a DM. I'm always interested in picking topics that the listeners are interested in. I also released a new promo. It's kind of cringe, but isn't all forms of promo kind of cringe. But do me a favesies and send it to a friend who you think would like to listen to RTBP. And of course, if you're not following me already, follow along on my socials at RTBP Podcast. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I've been live tweeting some movies lately, and I do want to get back into like the Instagram story game. I've been a little bit camera shy. I hope that you are safe and well out there, truly. As always, I'm your host, Torry, and I'm ready to be petty. See you soon. Bye.